This video is going to be an update on the SR20VE-T Sentra. It was like Alright, how's it going, everybody? Back in the garage again. New year, it's 2020, SR 2020. Man, YouTube is really awkward for me now. I don't know what happened, but it's weird. Okay, so, it might be a little bit shaky. I am on my cell phone. Every time I try to film with the camera, the battery's dead or it dies in 20 minutes. I need to get new batteries, whatever excuses. It's just going to be easier for me, and you guys will be able to see more if I just start whipping my phone out whenever I want to film something and getting it done on the old iPhone 5. Here we go. Let's jump into it. So much that's happened on this car since I blew it up last summer.
I blew up!
Let's start with some clips of that, shall we?
Is it like a little over 20, I think? I'm spacing out the videotape. Oil pressure's back to doing the same shit. Staying at 30 psi. And dropping. So, yep, that's my night. It's definitely dead. It's so dead. I don't know if you can hear the rod knock, but it's serious.
Alright, so total engine failure. Total complete engine failure as far as anyone's concerned. Got a rod knock in the lower end. Drove it home with a rod knock in the lower end. Not that it was very far. I drove maybe 6 miles with a rod knock, but a serious rod knock. And it basically just disintegrated everything. The motor, the turbo shot, everything the oil went through was shot. So I basically had to start square one. This video will basically be update as to what the 2020 build is going to be, seeing as I'm kind of starting to close in on my plans. So following engine failure, I kind of lost all motivation for this car for a little while. I just didn't really know where to go. I knew I had a block kind of sitting in the corner, but I still would need to search and find a crank, just because I didn't really, I don't want to have to mess with having a crank, you know, polished or whatever, and then having to have oversized bearings or yada yada. Like, as far as like these motors are fairly easy to find, I don't see why I would want to ever do that when I could just, you know, sit and wait for an extra month or two or whatever and just find a motor with a clean bottom end with a fresh crank and just good parts to use, rather than having to take something and have it, you know, machined and polished and then just having to run the risk and all that jazz. I don't want to have to deal with that right now as far as my car goes. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I lost motivation for a while and started scheming plans, started coming up with ideas as far as to kind of what I wanted to do with the car next. Definitely did not want to ever go back to NA power, that is for sure. That was out of the question. I already had, you know, last year spent a ton of money on the turbo setup, so no way I was ever going back to that. I've always wanted to do the VE head. That was up in the air, trying to find one of those. I had contacted a few people, nothing ever really worked out. Nothing was in my price range, basically, for what I wanted to spend on the car this winter. A buddy of mine that I work with found 2001 G20 Touring Edition, 5-speed car. It was in a kind of a front-end accident. Motor was good, transmission good, all that stuff was good. So my plan was to use the roller rocker bottom end, and this was actually before I'd ever tore my engine apart. And my plan was kind of still dumb thinking, like, well, I'll just use my head, not really thinking of how much damage I did with the bearing damage. Got that car, started buying some parts to make that happen, head gasket and whatnot, and then tore my engine apart and realized that I was then going to need to be in search of another head. So kind of went back to no motivation phase for another week or two, and then was like, you know what, I have that full roller rocker motor, let's just use the roller rocker head. And then come to find out that head was also no good, even though the motor ran phenomenally. It ran like a top. You mean no noises or nothing like that. There was some damage on one of the cam bearing journals, and it was just more than I would have wanted to deal with. So there goes that idea. So now I'm back to, I have a block, which this is that block. This is the roller rocker bottom end here with a new head gasket on top. I cleaned up the pistons, got the motor tapped for turbo. This bottom end is good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and send it with the stock bearings and stuff that are in here. We'll see what happens. But so I was back to basically square one, not square one, square two. So I had a block again, but now I needed a head. Whilst I was kind of making another plan for getting a new head and figuring that out, I decided to go ahead and, you know, I have this transmission from this G20, 70 series, much beefier, more stout transmission. It's over here, actually, in my current stash of transmissions. The 70 series. So I was like, you know what, why not? Let's go ahead and use the 70 series. Also, in doing so, I was already kind of planning on, you know, I was going to have all the hydraulic clutch setup stuff from the G20. So I was like, you know, I would really love to have a hydraulic clutch in this car. Let's go ahead and put that in here, which then is what kind of also snowballed into the, let's just use the whole transmission, everything, 70 series, hydraulic clutch, whole shebang, let's put it in the Sentra. So I started working on that. I have already, here's it's a little bit dark in there. So I have in here, all mounted up, the clutch master cylinder, here's the reservoir, and I have some stuff blacking, but inside the car, I just have some stuff in front of the door, and I'm like moving it right this second. But I do have the clutch pedal all mounted up in the vehicle. I do have some pictures I'll throw up on the screen now of the little bit. I think I just had to weld the tab onto the clutch pedal, but I have a few pictures of that you'll be seeing as I'm speaking right now. So sort of basically in the middle of that, I still need to add a bracket onto the firewall just to support where the master cylinder goes through. That'll basically be done, and then just run the lines once I get the transmission in the car. All right, so now I'm going to be upgrading the transmission in this car. You know, I was excited for the car again, but I still needed to figure out the head situation before going forward. Also, I knew I was going to need a new turbo, so I was on the search for a new turbo. And then got talking with my buddy again, found me the G20, and came up with another plan. I had been in, I think I'd maybe mentioned it in one of my last video or two that I put out on this channel here, that I was in a project for him on an NX2000 that he had with a VE swap. It had a blown, or a VE motor with a rod knock in it, and he had another good motor that he wanted me to swap in there for him. So I'd been in the middle of this project, and then we came up with the idea of, well, as long as the head is good from the blown motor that he's taking out, there's no reason why I can't go ahead and use it. So then came the idea of now SR20VE-T Sentra with the 70 series transmission swapped in. As you can see, here we have SR20VE head. All torn apart. I'm doing some valve seals on that, some other stuff I'll talk about in a minute. Here is the valve cover for that, which I will be using, and then here is the VE, which will be going into this blue NX here, with a few other tricky little parts that we got going on behind the scenes. But I will make a video of this car basically once I have it done and running. I'll basically make just kind of like a build bio style video and just kind of go over the car. So that will be cool in the future. But back to my car. So I have SR20VE-T Sentra going on now. Pretty cool. Kind of, you know, what I've wanted since I really got heavy into the SR stuff. So the plan for the car is using the roller rocker SR20 bottom end and using the VE head. I was snowballing going ahead and swapping over the VE pistons into this motor because they do have the valve reliefs on those pistons, but I don't really see much of a point. Basically, from everything that I've read on all the forums and everything I've gathered, I'm not gonna run risk of like valve interference on the pistons. Only if I were to ever upgrade my cams, and if I were to degree the cams is when I could start running into valve interference. So I'm not really worried there. Also, if I were to swap over the VE pistons, I would actually have a lower compression ratio than just sticking with the DE pistons. I believe with these DE pistons, I should have a compression ratio somewhere in like the 10.8 to 1 area, whereas if I were in the VE pistons, it would be the same as a stock VE, which is, I believe, 10.3 to 1. Higher compression, more power. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the DE pistons in here. Another thing that I have read on the internet is apparently the roller rocker pistons have a much, maybe not much smaller, but they have a smaller piston ringland as opposed to the older DE pistons like I was using in my last motor, which also was making me nervous when I started reading that. But it's the same size ringland as on the VE pistons, and if those can hold it, so can those ones. So I'm not going to swap over pistons. I'm just going to run stock DE pistons. Basically just going to send what was about to be a junkyard motor. Enough of the straight talking. Let's do some more talking with some part review. So as like I said, I was in the middle of taking apart that head. I'm doing some valve seals. Look at how gunked up these rocker arms are. Here I already have the exhaust valves all in the head over there. Here's everything for the intake side. Those would be the valve spring seats, spring and retainer. What's cool about the VE that I never knew until taking it apart is they have a dual spring setup. So you can see the larger and the smaller spring. And here is the intake valve here. You know, the reason I have these light out on the shirt there is you want to make sure you're always very careful. Shit. And I'm going to be reusing my adjustable cam gears, even though I'm not going to degree the cams, but I am going to use these because they're much lighter than the factory cams. And then back to the head over here. Like I said, have all of the exhaust valves in the head already. And here on the underside, you can see the exhaust valves. So, as you can see, those look a little bit nicer than factory valves. They're not all gunked up or nothing or gross. So, what's going on there is those are not factory valves. Those are factory valves. Not all of the factory valves are there though, because I'm stupid and I bent one. That's why I was joking and just threw one on the ground. That valve was actually bent as well. When I was disassembling the head, from the motor being so gunked up, the valve keepers were like stuck in place, and I didn't know the trick, or I did know like the tool that you just whack it on top and it pops it loose, but I didn't think of the trick of just putting a socket on top and whacking it with a hammer. They fly out just the same as with the tool. So I was trying with my valve spring compressor that I used in video long ago when I built my DE head. I was just trying to compress it harder and harder, not really thinking of the damage I was doing to the valve. I was basically compressing the valve into the little piece of cardboard I had to hold it from going down too far. I was pressing it so hard into that I in turn tweaked the valve a bit. So I ordered SuperTech valves, intake and exhaust, Inconel exhaust valves, stainless steel intake valves. Intake valves have not arrived in the mail yet. The exhaust valves got here before them, so that's why I went ahead and did the exhaust side already. But, so I will have it's not really a billet head, it's just head with some valves in it. And the last thing I kind of have to show you, I think it's the last thing I have to show. Yeah, it's the last thing I have to show. So, like I said, turbo was blown after driving it home with no oil pressure. I had already previously been driving it with pretty low oil pressure for a while, so it already had some shaft blade last time I had the car apart and taken a look at the turbo, but this time it now is gone, so I had to get a new turbo. So I got this one. Nothing special. Basically eBay almost. I mean, not really. Much nicer than your typical eBay. They have, On3 Performance has their own housing. They put their name engraved in it, or embossed in it, whatever, in the casting. But nothing special. This was like $400, but it is a 61 mil, basically a GT35-82 rep. So should put out a little bit more stink than the T04E I was running last year. I went ahead and got the V-band exit on this one. Make it a little bit easier to route my exhaust. I don't have to have the 5-bolt Ford flange on there to the V-band like I had when I first built the car. So, yeah, there's the new turbo. One other thing that I guess I'll just show you real quick. Brand new in the box SR20VE oil pump, because the DE oil pump just does not cut it. And then I also, since I have the full VE block over there, I have the oil drive spacer and the crank pulley off the VE as well to go ahead and run. So I'll be all set to go ahead and swap over to the VE oil pump and be good to go. I think I'm also going to use the, here is the roller rocker oil tube pickup. I have the VE style oil tube pickup right here, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and use that. They're different. I don't know why they're different. Everything else I can see as far as the bottom ends go on the roller rocker to the SR20VE are the same. As far as the oil pan goes, I believe the crank is the same. They're both a 4 counterweight crank versus the older SR's 8 counterweight crank. So that's the only thing that I really see different. So just gonna go ahead and swap over that since I'm doing the whole VE oil pump setup anyways. So that's about all I have for this one. Hopefully it's interesting for you guys. I know I haven't made a video in a long time, so I just wanted this to be kind of better than nothing sort of thing. I've been getting a lot of comments on my Instagram that have making me feel bad for my YouTube viewers. That is enough of me talking. Like I said, I don't know how much other footage I have saved up that I'll be able to put into this video, but I'll go through everything on my camera, everything on my phone, and try to make this as entertaining as possible. Definitely stay tuned if you want to see this stuff at some point or another. I will make videos. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time.